Late spring in Pennsylvania is sometimes difficult to anticipate. April of this year was abnormally rainy and warm. I generally have to mow my grass for the first time in early to mid-May, but not this year. At least it isn't snowing. We experienced a 6-inch snowstorm around this time last year. I suppose having to mow the lawn early is worth the cost of avoiding snow. And, with tax season ended, it was nice to be outside in the sunshine. My home has an intriguing feature. The backyard dips down, leading to a tiny creek and woods behind us. When the home was erected, the front was lowered off the road with backfill. This means a steep slope about halfway down the side of the home. Thus, the basement, which was totally enclosed in the front, became exposed in the back. This enabled me to install a bifold service door, allowing me to store the mowers and other equipment without cluttering up the garage. It was one of my favorite aspects of the home. I finished using the mower and everything fell into place. I'm allergic to grass, so I couldn't wait to get upstairs and shower. I was ready to head up the stairs when I heard my wife's voice. I had noticed her friend's car while cutting the grass in front of the house, so I wasn't surprised to hear talking. But as I heard what was being stated, my hand paused as I reached for the doorknob. I should probably start by introducing myself. My name is Rob Crane. I like to go by Bob, but in high school they started calling me Hogan after the actor Robert Crane, who played the lead in Hogan's Heroes. I didn't mind, but the show went off the air before I was born and is no longer regarded a pop culture reference. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with an accounting degree and still use the surname Hogan. I received my CPA degree shortly after graduating and now work as a team leader for a large business in Philadelphia, performing audits and other similar tasks. It's not the most fascinating employment, but it pays well and allows me to view the inner workings of many organizations. I have a specific talent for forensic analytics, which involves creating financial trials to analyze issues such as fraud and money laundering. I am beginning to be recognized as an expert and I have even been requested to advise the FBI on 2 cases. Kelly, my wife, was a political science and business double major with intentions to earn a law degree when we met at the start of freshman year. I was waiting for the first day of class when she strolled in. Kelly had the tall, delicate form of a dancer, but with somewhat bigger breasts. Her long strawberry blonde hair was thrown across her naked shoulders, creating a stunning image. She donned a lovely sundress and sandals that highlighted her smooth and delicate legs. The combination of innocence and eroticism was too much. I felt an immediate surge of arousal. Unfortunately, Kelly was neither seated next to me nor was she assigned to me in a group project. It took me 4 weeks to approach her and soften the ice. I said a ridiculous joke and she laughed. It was not an elegant giggle, but a full-fledged chuckle. We started conversing and I asked if she wanted to get some coffee after class. She smiled as she said, "I've been waiting for your question for weeks." We spent the last 2 years of college together almost every day. Our folks weren't very happy, but for our senior year we decided to live together. But they quickly realized how loyal we were to each other and moved on. I didn't think it could get any better, but it did. I graduated and was hired right away by one of Philadelphia's largest accounting firms. I was making ridiculous amounts of money for a 22-year-old who had recently graduated. Kelly got accepted to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and we continued to live in our student apartment. My firm offered to pay for my MBA, so I took classes as well. I rode SEPTA to work every day, so I didn't need a car, which kept expenditures down. Kelly graduated 3 years later, and I proposed to her over a celebratory dinner at Morton's Steakhouse in Rittenhouse Square. 6 months later, we got married. Kelly accepted a position as a deputy district attorney with the Bucks County Prosecutor's Office, located north of Philadelphia. We chose to buy a house in Doylestown, the county seat and location of the courthouse. The regional railroad line terminated there, so I could ride the train to work every day. It was an 80-minute one-way travel, but it was preferable to using the Schuylkill Expressway, also known as the Short Hill Expressway, or Interstate 95. Kelly and her mother discovered a house. It was an excellent starter home, with 3 bedrooms. One of the bedrooms served as an office, complete with 2 desks. I would occasionally work from home, and Kelly required her own room for legal work. Another bedroom would serve as a guest room. Of course, the final room was the master bedroom. Also, it was close to her parents' house. Kelly persuaded me that it would be a built-in nanny if we had children. I was an only child and had always desired siblings. Kelly and I had discussed having children in freshman year and decided to wait until Kelly was established in her career before we began trying. But we'd reached that point, and 2 nights ago we decided to stop taking Kelly's birth control and start trying for a baby. I was pleased than I had ever been before, but what I heard caused my hand to linger on the doorknob. Hogan and I have decided it is time for me to become pregnant, Kelly excitedly announced, which excited her friend, Olivia Watkins. Both women produced the same high-pitched scream, which reminded me of whales unintentionally beaching themselves on the Jersey shore and attempting to reach them. Standing on the steps, I smiled at their delight, which matched my own at becoming a father. I went for the pen again when I heard a question that took the smirk off my face and the joy out of me. Olivia remarked, "That's wonderful, Kelly, but what will you do about Paul?" Paul. Kelly drew her friend against her. Hogan is outside mowing the yard. There was a pause, and I noticed her gazing about, expecting me to emerge. She spoke again. I'd previously informed Paul that I was stopping the affair. He was okay with it. With Grossman stepping aside from his Senate seat, Paul believes he has a real opportunity. Getting caught having an affair with a married employee would be quite embarrassing. So simple. 3 sentences devastated my world. Paul Evans was Kelly's boss at the DA's office. He was a widower in his early 40s. His wife, Ann, died of breast cancer, leaving him as a single father to his daughter, Barbara. Paul was a political beast, and Kelly relished telling me stories about his maneuverings within his party to compete for higher office. I guess I just discovered how my wife had access to all of this underground information. Really, Olivia replied, simply going cold turkey. You've been hot and heavy for 6 months, and you're about to give up on a muffin stud. The teasing doubt in her tone made me want to rip Olivia's head off. She was a Penn classmate, and I knew her before Kelly. I knew Kelly and Olivia were great friends now, but I assumed she was also my friend. Guess I was mistaken. Stop it, Kelly argued, giggling. You are very awful. Paul is a superb lover, yet it was impolite to play with him. I adore Hogan, but Paul just took and used me, whatever he wanted. There was no love in it, simply sheer sex and strength. Now that Bob and I are expecting a kid, I don't want to take any chances. I love Hogan and intend to be a nice and faithful mother. How many more clichés will we breed here, I wondered. All that remains is to get home, find an unexpected automobile in the driveway, and discover them having sex in my bed, and everything will be complete. I wanted to rush into the room and yell. I wanted to wreck the room, but my muscles were paralyzed. I was astonished and couldn't move. My heart pounded in my ears. So, cold turkey? Asked Olivia. Kelly giggled again. Well, not really, she confessed. I have a conference with Paul in Pittsburgh next week. We'll have some goodbye sex there. I will miss the sex. However, Hogan and the baby are more essential. I couldn't take it anymore, but I had no idea what to do. I adored Kelly, but it was killing me. At that moment, I began researching into the business. I needed to step back and think. I needed to plan. I began stomping up the steps, as if I were ascending a ladder. Then I opened the door and entered the kitchen. Kelly and Olivia sat there, cups of tea in front of them. Was there a touch of remorse in Kelly's face? Honey, are you okay? She inquired in a concerned tone. I realized tears were running down my face. Allergies, I hummed. This is going to be a dreadful spring, so head upstairs and take a shower. Drop those clothes near the bathroom, and I'll wash them right away to avoid contaminating your closet. I got you a new pack of Claritin D last week. That is in the medical cabinet. Thanks. I managed to say something before starting up the stairs. I needed time to contemplate. The following morning was Monday, and I used the excuse of an early meeting to get out of the house before Kelly awoke. The night before, I used my allergies as an excuse to go to bed early because my emotions were running high. Sitting on the train, I reflected about what I'd heard. On the one hand, my wife was unfaithful, but she chose to stay with me and bear me a kid for sexual reasons. Some would say I should leave it at that and be content that my wife is back in the marriage and intends to be a good wife and mother. However, a voice in my head argues that if she did it once, what's stopping her from doing it again 10 years from now, when the kids are in school? Won't she have another sexy affair? Then there's the divorce with the kids, in which Kelly will most likely receive the children while I will be required to pay substantial alimony and maintenance. As an accountant and business analyst, I had to think about risk and reward. I found myself doing the exact same thing here. My faith in my wife was entirely shattered. The just sex argument ignores what's really crucial in these situations. It demonstrates a complete lack of respect for the spouse. The cheater is aware that their actions are improper and are causing harm to the other person. Otherwise, they would be doing it openly, and I would have known from the start. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I would have tolerated her sleeping with Dawn, but if she had told me about it, some respect would have been shown. Kelly's actions demonstrated how much respect she has for me. I worked all day, but a portion of my mind was focused on what I needed to do. I had no proof beyond an overheard exchange. I hadn't observed any changes in the last 6 months. While the affair lasted, a direct confrontation without proof would be a huge risk with little payoff. Kelly will deny this. Paul Evans would dispute this. Taking any lawsuit to court would be financial death, as every judge, politician, and lawyer in the surrounding counties knew Evans. I'd be buried to keep his name pure. I considered just leaving and starting anew somewhere else. It was enticing, but the house would act as an anchor around my neck. Kelly couldn't afford it on her salary alone, and we had almost little equity. She'd have to sell it quickly to prevent foreclosure, and given the current status of the market, that seemed doubtful. It would have devastated both of our credit histories. Being a CPA with a terrible credit history is not a smart idea while looking for a new job. How can anyone trust you with someone else's money when you clearly can't manage your own? I required proof before taking action. I received it. However, it came from the most unlikely source. 3 days later, I hung on, but I still couldn't find any evidence to back up what I'd heard. Her personal laptop was clean. There's no secret. Email accounts were discovered, but no seductive lingerie was concealed in a box in the back of her wardrobe. There were no receipts from locations she was not authorized to go. Absolutely nothing. Kelly then called me at work and informed me that we had been invited to a political announcement party at Paul Evans' house on Friday night. I assumed it was his high-profile declaration that he will run for a seat in the United States Senate. I considered making a high-profile declaration, but I lacked proof. Damn it. We came just in time for the big occasion. Evans owned a large residence at Washington Crossing and a modest horse farm. A large tent was built up in the backyard to accommodate all of the guests. And when we stepped in at the front of the receiving line, Paul Evans, who was a widower, stood asshole style. Evans didn't have a wife to play hostess, so he supposedly enlisted his 21-year-old daughter. She stood behind her father, greeting the guests as if she were born to do so. When it was our turn, Evans grinned warmly at Kelly and said, "Kelly, you did it. How beautiful." He kissed my wife chastely on her cheek. He then turned to me. "Robert, it's nice to see you again. I would be lost without your wife, but I know I'll have to let her go soon when you start to grow your family." He laughed at his own joke. "Just let me take her when you're finished with her. There will be no harsh feelings." There was more laughter. Kelly even reddened somewhat, and I felt compelled to finish off the smarmy gown. I took his hint, which he obviously assumed had gone over my head. Who knows what the future may bring? I spoke in a neutral tone. Not antagonistic, yet not particularly friendly. It was the same manner I reported the audit results. Evans reddened slightly, and Kelly elbowed me while muttering something about rudeness. Evans casually moved on to the next visitor, leaving us alone with his daughter. Kelly was a really beautiful woman, but Barbara Evans was a vision. I noticed it even as I was angry. Her rich red hair and dazzling grin reminded me of a younger Maureen O'Hara. Barbara looked like she belonged on a pin-up swimsuit calendar next to Kate Upton, whilst Kelly looked like a busty ballet dancer. She possessed the mix of beautiful looks, a healthy body, hair, and skin that photographers desired and that were frequently photoshopped to attain. Paul Evans had the ideal triple threat, political family. He seemed like the ideal intelligent statesman and family man. Losing his wife to cancer gave him with the ideal wife. She was admired, and any opponent who attacked her was on the verge of career suicide. Barbara was a princess. A prom queen, I graduated from Penn State with degrees in business and law, a former gymnast, and now a part of Penn State's cheerleading group. Barbara, according to Kelly's story, intended to try out for the Eagles cheerleading squad at the next open competition, despite the fact that she had just turned 21 and had a late wife and a brilliant, attractive, and photogenic kid. "The press will adore him on the campaign trail," Robert exclaimed, squeezing me passionately. It was not a courteous hug at a party, it was a full-body crush. Parts of her body pressed against mine with considerable pleasure. "You look fantastic. No wonder Kelly has been keeping you hidden. You never attend any of our parties. You should not be working as hard. It is not healthy." She somehow managed to say it all in one breath. In less than a second, my mood shifted from rage to pure shock. I made a few nice words about how lovely she looked and was about to leave when it struck me. First and foremost, Barbara never said hello to Kelly. Second, what kind of parties? Kelly did not give me the chance to ask. She rushed over to greet the young woman. Then we had no choice but to make room for the next guests in line. Kelly and I went to socialize. I wondered what Barbara knew. After getting my wife a drink, I asked, "Barbara, what kind of gatherings were you talking about?" Kelly just smirked and muttered contemptuously. She was simply teasing the little troublemaker. "Paul occasionally has team meetings and strategy sessions here. He claims that having a drink in his hand and sitting at the bar helps him think better. You never know who will be in the next booth. She's been home a few times since we met here. Don't tell anyone, but Paul allowed her to drink at home before she turned 21. Okay, I worked it out. Under the cover of team meetings, the bastard had sex with my wife in his own home. They may even be real meetings in which Kelly is the last to depart. Or perhaps she left first and returned after everyone else had departed. That would prevent the legal team from speculating on why Kelly constantly stayed behind to help clean up the mess when his wife died and his daughter was away at college. He did not need to find a secluded hotel room, thus there is no record of their meeting. So Barbara goes to your team meetings, I asked. Kelly shrugged the question away. No, she has been home several times when school were cancelled. She's merely mocking her father about hosting parties during business hours. She yanked at my arm. Come on, honey, let's go. Treat your fiancé for the next hour. Kelly did not take any steps away from me. We spoke with a couple of her coworkers and some of them mentioned our hopes to have a baby and how sad they would be to miss Kelly for a long. But they were really thrilled for Kelly and me. Honestly, I was a little embarrassed. Why did so many individuals know about our plans? An hour later, Paula Evans summoned everyone to attention. His daughter stood behind him and grinned. He began by thanking everyone for coming, and then began by declaring his major campaign. Everyone expected it, yet they were nonetheless excited. I spotted the local newspaper's publisher and a reporter taking notes. I'm sure it will be covered extensively in tomorrow's newspaper. I won't bother you with specifics about the celebration. It would have been a fun time if my heart hadn't been shattered and my mind hadn't been racing with ideas on how to prove everything. Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, arrived around 90 minutes after the announcement and stated that Paul wanted to speak with his staff. Paul was an elected official, while Margaret was a senior staff member who operated the office. They could also visit and leave every 4 years, but Margaret remained a constant, a tough woman but well recognized in the legal field for her honesty and sincerity. Kelly accepted the position in part because she wanted to work with an older female lawyer. I really liked her. Margaret had been married to an electrician for over 30 years, who had kept her in college and now had a rather successful electrical selection firm. These two were dedicated to one another. I always saw them as role models for Kelly and me. "Sorry for stealing your wife from you, Hogan," Margaret offered. "Paul wants to address office organization as soon as he finishes campaigning." A second later, they were both gone. I slipped away from the small group of spouses who had remained at the meeting and went to the other side of the enormous pool, across from the patio where the party was held. There was a wicker swing chair suspended from chains. It was in the shade so people could see me if they looked closely, but I wouldn't stand out. In other words, it was the ideal setting for me to collect my thoughts. I'd been sitting for less than 5 minutes when a voice interrupted my solitude. "So this is where you are hiding?" The voice purred. I looked up as Barbara slid herself onto the wicker swing next to me. She had situated herself so that she sat facing me without saying anything. Her small black dress skimmed her tan thighs, clinging to her body and hinting at what was underneath but disclosing nothing. It was both tempting and innocent. It said a lot about my state of mind that I took it almost academically. She said, "You look like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders." I didn't want to discuss this with the daughter of my wife's boyfriend, no matter how attractive she was. "We've been pretty busy in the office. There are numerous inspections going on." I asked to discontinue the chat. "Really?" Barbara inquired in a curious tone. "I just finished my last accounting class at school. For several classes we discussed the applicability of forensic accounting in law enforcement. I thought it fascinating. Even throughout my anguish, it astonished me." "Really?" I asked incredulously. "It's not sexy or anything, but it's really detective work to pick out all the proper pieces of information from a slew of other facts and combine them to produce a clear picture. Furthermore, because some people are attempting to hide this information, the situation becomes much more convoluted. Most individuals see it differently." Barbara began to explain in detail about what she had learned in class and why she appreciated it so much. I have to say I was amazed. I've had interns at the firm who couldn't speak as eloquently about this subject. Focusing on her words allowed me to overlook both her appearance and, more significantly, the wrath that was bubbling inside me. I felt myself sliding into my job as mentor. It helped to take my mind off the emotional stress. "Did you truly enjoy the class?" I commented. "You appear to have learned the material quite well." Barbara flushed at my compliment for a moment. I noticed a sweet girl who was genuinely moved by my praise. "When I graduated from high school, I seriously considered joining the FBI. Dad wants me to become a prosecutor or work in one of his friend's legal businesses. I don't think that is what I want to do." "You should pursue your own aspirations, not your father's." It was honest advice, not that I was opposed to upsetting the jerk's plans. "I've done some work with the FBI when audits revealed something criminal." Sharp people spoke out before Barbara could respond. Kelly walked out from the shadows. "That's where you disappeared. You did not do anything inappropriate?" she asked teasingly. Barbara turned to face my wife and smiled brightly. "We were just discussing Bob's employment. We had just discussed it in class. I wanted to acquire an expert's viewpoint, so Hogan is him." Kelly spoke proudly. "I reviewed one of his audit reports, which showed an employee embezzling money using his boss's password. Hogan discovered that some of the transfers occurred when the individual was on a business trip, but the login was from the corporate headquarters. Most of us would have stopped when we saw the boss." Hogan continued digging. "I could have obtained a conviction against that employee on the first day of law school." Hogan denied the prosecutor's office any prospect of success. Kelly looked at me proudly as she told me this small story. It really embarrassed me. How could she be proud of me and say she loved me when she was in a 6-month relationship with her damn boss? Kelly's question must have cast a shadow on my face, revealing my bewilderment. "What is wrong, honey?" "Nothing," I replied, just thinking about the problem. "Okay, that's enough," Kelly admonished Lee. "It is a party." She strained to regain her breath and replied, "Hogan, you will never guess the opportunity that has come my way. Paul and Margaret want me to take over the administrative duties because I intend to go on maternity leave as soon as you finish your work. That way, when I depart, there would be no more work to do. I will be working directly for Margaret." Kelly's separation from Paul made my heart sink. My dreams were destroyed in a single second. Kelly says, "I will have to travel on occasion. I'll be delivering vital paperwork to Paul throughout the campaign, so I won't be involved, but I'll be able to watch some behind-the-scenes action. This is going to be a lot of fun." I felt my heart hurting all over again. I understand. I've heard Kelly say she wants to end the affair so we can have a baby. However, I can readily imagine her rekindling the affair in preparation for campaign contributions. Who is to tell that if she becomes pregnant, the baby will be mine? The sex is based on my height and color. Without a DNA test, this would be extremely difficult to determine. My rage began to swell, but I held it in. Now wasn't the time. Barbara began conversing with Kelly about her new role in the campaign. They soon became interested in their chat, and I was forgotten. I took advantage of the chance to gather my thoughts. After tonight, I would begin plotting. I needed a means to counteract Paul's political power, but truthfully, I had no notion how to do it. 2 days later, I received an answer at my office. "Your appointment is at 4 o'clock. My receptionist called out from the open door. We can no longer call them receptionists." I checked my Outlook calendar and found nothing booked. Before I could respond, she strolled in. Barbara Evans. "Hello, Hogan," she called out as she entered the house. Her beautiful dark red hair fell over her shoulders. She was dressed in a light sundress that accentuated her beautiful legs, as well as sandals with straps that surrounded her legs almost to the knee. Her breasts were moderately covered. There was no visible cleavage, but the material strained against her chest. Suggestive, 2 thin straps supported the garment, leaving her arms exposed. I was speechless as I watched her enter. "I hope you do not mind," Barbara began. She shut my office door behind her. I informed Mary that we had an appointment to discuss my profession and how Kelly works for my father. I politely rose from my seat. "I'm pleased to see you. I was only working on some reports." I motioned for her to one of the chairs in front of my desk. I sat down once she had taken her seat. "What would you like to chat about?" Barbara's cheerful expression vanished abruptly. "I believe you know, Bob. I could see it in your expression when you spoke to my bastard father. I'm so sorry. He damaged such a good person." I was stunned. It was not what I expected. "What exactly are you talking about?" I asked cautiously. Barbara grimaced. "My father is having an affair with your wife." I leaned back in my chair, surprised by how bluntly it was delivered. "Have you just found out?" Barbara asked quietly. I nodded. "I apologize." "How? When did you find out?" I asked. "Approximately 3 months ago," Barbara admitted. "I'm not sure when it started, but I learned about it in February. One Friday I arrived home early and they were holding one of their meetings at our house. I had a late lunch with a high school acquaintance, so I just dashed in, dropped off my belongings, said hello, and left. Dad inquired when I'd be home and I replied after supper. My pal was sick and couldn't make it. I took a bite to eat and went home. I watched my father and Kelly having sex in our hot tub. I snapped photographs of them and even made them run nude inside the home. There was 1 foot of snow on the ground." "You took images of your father having sex?" I inquired in shock. I also wanted to know if I could receive copies of the images. That would be extremely beneficial in the divorce, as if reading my mind. Barbara reached inside her purse, retrieved a huge envelope, and placed it on my desk. "Here are some photos from that day plus a few others." She hesitated, grinning. "Dad built a security system in the home. Everything is locked from the outside. There are cameras in numerous rooms. If you know the website and have the key fob and password, you can enter the house from practically anywhere. There is a thumb drive with videos on it. It stunned me. Paul's daughter handed me everything I needed to divorce and destroy her father. Why? I asked. Barbara's expression changed from sorrowful to angry. Because, she continued quietly, I hate that bastard more than you ever could. I said nothing and waited. After a minute she spoke. Dad met Mom while she was in college. He was an aspiring attorney assigned to Philadelphia's sex crimes unit. Mom had traveled from Ireland to study. Her family was well off, but they were killed in the Londonderry bombing. She came here to escape the tumult. Her speech took on a gentle tone, which she had most likely learned from her mother. Mom dated a loser who hit her so hard that she wound herself in the ER. Kelly halted and put a tiny book on my desk. It was extremely thick and trimmed with green lace. I discovered her diary after she died, and she was somewhat of a submissive. She preferred to be led by a powerful man. This asshole went too far and she wound up in the hospital. Dad was assigned the case, they met, the guy went to jail, and a year later they got married. Dad was always ambitious. He landed a smart, gorgeous woman with an exotic accent. Mom got a strong man to defend her. I showed up several years later. Dad urged me to try gymnastics. He believed that his daughter's Olympic performance would benefit his political career. Do you know how most gymnastic careers end? I shook my head, saying, I never thought of that. Barbara smiled. They call it the 3Bs: tits, asses, and boys. I received the first one. I was told to cheer and be an all-American girl. I didn't mind because I liked performing, but by the time I was 16, I understood I was merely a prop for my father's dreams. Mom knew about it virtually from the start. Dad has been having affairs virtually since they were married. Mom knew and begged him to stop, but she was too weak to intervene. She felt trapped. She was a confirmed Catholic, so divorce was out of the question. Barbara paused for a moment, and I allowed her to gather her thoughts. After a moment, she continued. Sometimes I wonder if her poor response to cancer treatment was the result of her unconsciously wanting to die or actively sabotaging her treatment. Either way, I was with her in the hospital when she died. The official story goes that my father was in court seeking a murder charge. He got the doctor to change the time of death. He was actually banging his assistant in her apartment to celebrate. He just displayed the mom as his trophy, and the press loved the story of how they met. Heroic prosecutor goes to rescue a battered woman. Hell, the bastard beat her himself more than once. From what I've seen. Why are you telling me all this? I had to ask. Because you don't deserve it, Hogan. My father, he's not a very nice man. After my mom died, he hid his affairs until I left for college. Then he started having meetings at the house, and they aren't just for his work. He also holds meetings for some of the charity groups he's involved in. I know for a fact that he sleeps with 2 other women from these groups. One of the poor women actually thinks it's true love and is going to leave her husband. Kelly thinks so. I asked. I knew I'd heard, but I was still curious. Barbara shook her head and replied, no, she seems to think it's just fun. They say power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Kelly seems to be proof of that. I heard her talking to Daddy about some senator they were meeting and how excited she was when she got back to Doylestown. I flinched at such a rude remark. I even remembered the day I had come home to a wild woman, and it had been one of the best nights of sex of my life. The cherished memory was now tainted because I knew my wife probably wasn't even thinking about me at that moment. So what do you want? I asked. To her credit, Barbara looked me straight in the eye as she answered, I want you to dissolve your marriage to that cheater. I want my father's career ruined to the point where he'll never be elected dog catcher in a town full of cats. I thought about just sending my stuff to the side. But he has too many friends. I think together we can make them pay. Won't it be harder for you to finish school? She shook her red hair again. No, my mom left me her inheritance as a trust fund. I haven't touched it. But if I needed to, I could pay for the rest of my tuition and my MBA. And I'd have a pretty good margin left if your mom had so much money. Why didn't she take you and leave? She could have gone to Ireland wherever your father got to. Barbara wrinkled her nose as I said she was raised Irish Catholic. She was taught that divorce was not an option no matter what happened. Mom held on to her faith to the very end. That's the only thing that makes me think her death was unconscious rather than intentional, since they also consider suicide to be the unpardonable sin. I have to admit, I couldn't see anything but the truth. And Barbara? She'd said she wanted to destroy her father's career, and my having that information didn't bode well for his ambitions. I couldn't imagine that this could be some kind of trap. If Kelly and Paul wanted to wipe me off the face of the earth, they could do it openly in court. That kind of despicable shit was only appropriate if they were desperate like me. A plan began to form in my head. I would need Barbara's help with a few things. It would show me how determined she was to destroy her father. Okay, I agreed, but I don't want to destroy him by releasing those pictures or even calling his name in the divorce. Barbara looked at me in surprise. Why not? She demanded. Her face flushed with passion and she took a breath to start some kind of speech. I stopped her with a raised hand. I didn't say we wouldn't destroy him, but I don't want to deal with bad press in the form of a cuckolded husband in a political scandal. Instead, I want to destroy what he spent his entire life trying to accomplish, destroy his power and influence, and I can have a quiet and peaceful divorce that no one will worry about. Barbara looked at me with shock on her face. After a moment, a sly smile appeared on her face. What do you want from me? I smirked. I'm going to do what I do best. Get me his financial records, personal and campaign. They got Capone thanks to tax evasion. Having gotten to know your father, I have no doubt I can find something. And if you don't? What? She asked. I smiled. I can cook some. Over the next 3 days, Barbara and I kept busy. She installed a keystroke logger on my father's personal laptop and home computer. She also made a full backup of his computer's hard drive. We customized their security system so that it would upload the recordings to a cloud space that I know of, which was physically located overseas. How nice of the asshole to bug his own house. For my part, I didn't tap Kelly's cell phone. Thanks to Barbara's evidence, I didn't need anything else. But I did activate the GPS tracker designed for parents watching their kids. It basically used cell towers for location unless I sent a command to activate the GPS. I just didn't want it to me at home. When I was busy with work, I faked a groin injury the day after Barbara first came to me. It gave me an excuse not to have sex with my wife. I never thought I would have to make up an excuse not to have sex with my favorite wife after hearing about the number of Paul's partners. I didn't want to risk even more than I unknowingly did. Besides, I don't think I could have done it without venting my anger. By the way, I made a doctor's appointment to get tested for STDs. Nothing showed up at first, but some of them, like HIV, can take months before they give a positive antibody result. Kelly traveled to the conference in Pittsburgh, annoyed and frustrated to meet Paul one last time. Not surprisingly, she was very excited about the trip. Having left her hanging for the past few days, she was very excited. Some guys might have given her goodbye sex as revenge. My problem was that somewhere inside, I still loved her. I could never trust her again. But that didn't mean I didn't still love her. But I also couldn't bear the thought of having sex with her after what I'd learned. It was Thursday morning and Kelly was waiting with her packed bag for Paul and a junior lawyer from their office who was traveling with them to a conference. I wondered if the young guy knew he was their cover. So I'll be home Sunday afternoon, Kelly said, coming in behind me and dropping my bag by the front door. I sat at the table with my back to her and sipped my coffee. She wrapped her arms around me and leaned in so that her lips were right next to my ear. I hope you're feeling better so we can start on the baby, she whispered. Her tone would have brought a dead man back to life, and her scent. It brought me back to more innocent days. It made me want to cry right there. But I managed to hold it together. I'll ice it so it heals, I assured her. I stroked her arm and kissed her forehead. She moaned. I wish I didn't have to go to this. It would be so much better to just stay home with you and be naked all weekend. You can always tell Evans that something more important came up, I said. It just came out. And from the way she looked at me, she heard something in my tone. What's your problem, Paul? She asked in an amazed voice. First you were rude at the party and now you sound like you hate the man. I forced myself to calm down and shrugged. Honestly, I've seen too many hotheads like Evans who think they're untouchable and the epitome of power. They're big fish in small ponds. They sell the illusion of power and get people to buy into it. Like that mayor in South Carolina last year. Big, powerful guy embezzled the city's money by sleeping with 3 married women. Now he's serving 10 years in federal prison and they're all divorced and publicly humiliated. I have the same feeling about Evans. If he makes it to DC, he'll be banging uncomprehending interns within a week. But eventually his wheels fall off and his shit's going to splatter all over the place when it does. Kelly stared at me in shock. She'd heard me rant about those creeps before, but she'd never connected Evans to them before. I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but it felt good to let it out. And even though the marriage was over, I also felt it was only fair to warn Kelly. I still loved her, even if I would never trust her again. Hogan, that's a terrible thing to say about Paul, protested Kelly. He's a good man who has done a lot for the people of this county. He's not like that. I heard an almost pleading tone in her denial and a timing that could not have been foreseen. We heard the sound of a car horn coming from the house. Paul had arrived. Kelly sighed disappointingly. She gave me a glance that quickly flashed with regret and almost fear. I'll be home in 4 days, Kelly said in a conciliatory tone, and we can talk about it. But be ready, love. We need to have a baby. She then wrapped her arms around me and kissed me passionately. I returned the kiss just as fervently. Have a good week, she exhaled. I love you. I love you too, I replied. She picked up her bag and opened the front door. Bye, darling, she called over her shoulder. Goodbye, Kelly, I said. Then I closed the door. 30 minutes later, I left on the train for the city. Barbara and I had an appointment at the FBI. Turns out I didn't have to manufacture any evidence. I would rate Paul Evans's embezzlement skills as moderately intelligent. Barbara and I met at her off-campus apartment to go through the documents she pulled from his computer. Pretty standard procedure. By my calculations, he had about $2 million stashed away in an offshore account. At least that's how much he transferred into it. But I can't be sure it's still there because those records weren't included. Most of this money came from numerous tiny donors who wouldn't raise concern with the IRS. But why were people from out of state donating to the DA's campaign? I was able to track a number of them to offenders who had charges dropped or plea agreements with extraordinarily favorable punishments. It was Barbara who discovered the biggest explosive. Turns out she wasn't the only child. Evans had knocked up 2 other ladies during this period. One of them was born 3 years before his wife died. The mother was one of his employees at the time. The third child was born 8 months after his wife's death to an 18-year-old female volunteer at the hospital where his wife was treated. Evans donated $2,000 a month from campaign contributions to each woman as poll research consultants. Barbara nearly ruined her own flat in fury. That red hair certainly is a warning. By the time Kelly and Paul left, we had already sorted everything out in Paul's notes. There were still questions, but we didn't have enough resources to get to the information. So I jotted down all the findings and set up a meeting with a senior FBI agent I worked with in the Philadelphia office. Barbara walked in to give him the story we had come up with. Barbara said that after taking a forensic accounting course she wanted to look at the actual documents. She chose to look at her father's records out of innocent curiosity. When she spotted certain abnormalities she called me because my wife had worked for her father and knew of my experience. Gary was a seasoned professional. He sensed there was more behind it. But we dropped a gift-wrapped item on his lap and he didn't push it. A corrupt prosecutor in his own backyard. A sleazy prosecutor who just began a candidacy for the U.S. Senate. This career-creating argument felt like manna from heaven. We got a cab to Barbara's apartment as she had courses late, and I walked to the 30th Street station to take the train home. I was already thinking about packed everything and leaving when Kelly got home. Gary pledged to speed things up and at least subpoena Evans' records by Wednesday. It was doubtful that word of the probe would get out. Before that, the bastard will learn how unreal his authority is when all the rats desert his ship. Kelly contacted me when I was on the train way home. She said she called early because they were going out to some large supper and it would be extremely late before she got back to her hotel. I had no doubt she wasn't planned on sleeping in her room tonight. I made a few vague statements indicating it was okay. She sensed my distracted tone and inquired what was wrong. I just had a meeting with FBI investigators on a case. I said, I'm on the train. Plus the inquiry is still continuing, so I can't discuss it. All of this was absolutely true. It sounds like you've been seriously harmed. Kelly spoke in a concerned tone. Yes, this story is going to be terrible. When the full tale becomes public, it is likely to create national headlines. Really? Kelly inquired, her eyes widening. Can't you give me a hint? I could not help myself. Bribery, money laundering, sex and adultery are all examples of criminal behavior by politicians. Children. A typical summer romance. Many. 1. I understand. I grimaced. I've already talked too much. If I say anything else, the Bureau will silence me. You're no fun to be around, Kelly pouted. Do not worry, honey. Your secret is safe with me. We said our goodbyes and she went. As I walked into the house, it struck me. My marriage was over. We dated and were married. We had been together for 10 years. I never anticipated to be single again, but it was what I was facing right now. Eventually I just sat on the couch waiting for the sun to set. I just sat there watching. I felt as if I was seeing my life slide away over the horizon. I just watched. It was many hours after sunset before I began. It was Saturday afternoon that I snapped out of my self-pity. I'm not saying I didn't deserve to indulge, but I realized I had to change things up. Ironically, I was mowing the lawn again when I noticed a BMW convertible drive into my driveway. I paused the mower as Barbara got out of the car. The first thing I noticed was her long, pale legs protruding out of the driver's seat. She was wearing her sandals again, this time with delicate laces wrapped around her calves. They always reminded me of the ancient Greeks. As she stood, I could see her carved legs flexing, indicating the strength hiding beneath her hard skin. In keeping with the Greek theme, she was dressed in a pure white toga-style dress that reached mid-thigh but had 2 inches of lace at the bottom, revealing a few enticing glances of her upper thighs. The dress was made of a lightweight, silky material that fitted her curves and appeared translucent. Her firm breasts were supported by a bikini that showed through her outfit. Her arms were bare, save for a few faint freckles on the tops of her arms and shoulders. The dress was slipped over one shoulder, leaving the other naked. Her beautiful red hair fell down and waved over the same shoulders. However, her gray-green eyes and smile drew my attention as she approached me. I shut the engine off and saluted her. Barbara remarked, "Well, you look better than I expected. I almost expected to have to pull you out of a bottle or off of a ledge." I snorted. I had many ideas about both choices last night. It had to be done, I explained. Furthermore, not being able to see a lawyer distracts me, she asked. I shrugged. I completed it on Tuesday before they even departed. The papers will be ready by Monday. I plan to conduct an audit at a client in Austin and depart on Tuesday. Business travels like this typically last 3 days, and then I work remotely till the report is completed. In this instance, I'll be there for the full 3 weeks. I shrugged. I suppose it's the coward's way out. But I don't want to be here when this entire disaster is over. Barbara's expression was one of agreement. She knew it would also draw attention to her as the bastard's daughter. I'm delighted you're thinking ahead, the redhead added. But I've realized that's what I'm excellent at. A smile appeared again. Now I know how to plan. So this is my plan, Barbara announced. I'll help you finish your assignment here. Then you'll come to my apartment. We'll have fun. You can even ogle me all you want. I own a swimsuit. You will fall in love. The final line was delivered in a voice that could have raised even a dead man. I attempted to rally. Barbara, I am still married. I resisted, and I doubt I'll be prepared for anything else for a while. You need to let out some steam before you erupt, the sexy redhead girl insisted. Furthermore, as the adage goes, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Her glance was simultaneously humorous, cunning, and guileless. I couldn't help but laugh at one of those amazing coincidences that proves reality is stranger than fiction. We ran into Olivia, of all people, after I finished my yard work. I washed up, and we went out for a late lunch at a lovely restaurant. I wasn't searching for revenge sex, but it felt good to get out of the house. And going on a date with a woman as nice as Barbara, and who looked exactly like her, would be easy. As I approached the restaurant, I spotted a car parked near to it. It was a Levi's automobile. I always thought it was illegal to put items in Jersey Shore bumper stickers on a Mustang. I almost told Barbara to turn around and we'd find another location, but I did not. Instead, I acted utterly out of character. Everything was done on a whim. After all, despite my careful planning, something inside me erupted when I noticed Olivia's car parked in that lot. I casually placed my arm around the red-headed beauty and led her into the restaurant. Without further ado, I tipped the host to seat us at a specific table. It was partially shadowed, but it was clearly visible when we returned from the restroom. I sat next to Barbara, facing outward. She smiled as I grasped her hand. What brought this about? She asked with a nice smile. Not that I am complaining. I laughed. Remember when I told you how I discovered out my wife was cheating on me? What about her pal Olivia? Well, her automobile is parked down the block. Barbara let out a throaty laugh. So I am going to be the other woman. Ooh, that is something I could live with. She leaned in and put an amazingly gentle kiss on my lips. It wasn't a deep, passionate kiss, but rather one that implied and promised more to come. A lover's kiss. The lunch arrived and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. The tricks were forgotten. While I enjoyed Barbara's company, her sharp sense of humor was killing me. I'd never heard a counting sound that nasty before. I happened to look over and saw Olivia stroll past us. I pointed her out to Barbara. That feels good, she giggled. I have been looking forward to this. With those words, she leaned forward and kissed me. I ran my hand underneath the table, along her leg. Her thighs had extraordinarily delicate skin, and beneath those muscular, supple muscles, the touch was electric. I could feel the heat radiating from her panties. My hand moved forward on its own to feel the dampness. I was so caught up in the experience that I was astonished to hear Olivia yell at me. Hogan, what the hell are you doing? She shouted at me. Who is this harlot who is banging on your wife when she is away? I thought better of you. I have no doubt that the entire restaurant injured her. I released go of Barbara and turned to face my erstwhile friend. What is the problem, Liv? It's just a little carefree sex before Kelly and I get married and have a baby and you'll be able to resist it. Everyone is attempting to eat. Olivia looked at me as if I had hit her with a dead fish. What? She began. Come on. Liv, Kelly is doing the same thing. I'm certain she's having sex with her boss right now. It has been months now, so I figured it was only fair to have sex with the boss's adult daughter. Olivia may have had a heart attack. Barbara began to chuckle, and I gently squeezed her to keep her calm. Of course I'd forgotten where my hand was, so her giggle evolved into a moan of delight. Olivia gasped. You know about it. I know I'm supposed to be the devoted husband who doesn't see anything while my wife runs around and is assisted by a woman. I considered him a close friend. Olivia's brow furrowed at my contemptuous tone. I'm sure Kelly wanted one final taste of odd before having a baby. Kind of like the last fling before the wedding, provided that was good with her. What's the wrong with me? I had no idea Kelly had any affairs before Paul's. However, as the phrase goes, if you cheat once, you will cheat again. I only took note of my suspicion and wondered whether Liv would become unbalanced to validate it. She was. Do you also know about that? She exhaled. No, but thank you for the confirmation, I responded. Olivia is pallid. Olivia, go away, I said. She turned and disappeared behind the table. Several minutes later, we heard a noise. Olivia was exiting the restaurant. Barbara chuckled, saying, "It was fun while it lasted." I truly wished she had stayed longer. Her smile caused me to blush. You know, she is probably on the phone with your wife right now, she added. Probably. I agreed. I'll give her 5 minutes before my phone goes off. However, if she departs right now, it will take 5 hours to get home from Pittsburgh. That would allow us to have dessert while also giving me enough time to get home and pack. Unfortunately, I won't get to see you in a bikini as promised. Barbara laughed again. I suppose we can do this another time. She reached up and grabbed my shirt, pulling me closer. My semester concludes in a week and a half. She murmured into my ear. I've always wanted to see Austin. I hardly heard her words as her tongue slid into my ear. Epilogue. Yeah, that's when everything truly starts to go wrong. Kelly began calling me 10 minutes after Olivia left the restaurant. I heard a few of her texts, and she was furious. He cheated on her. It almost had me laughing. After 1 hour of her messages and SMS, I blocked her phone number. I knew she'd eventually call from another phone, but she was coming back from Pittsburgh and couldn't simply ask to borrow someone's phone on the turnpike. I went home and packed all of my personal possessions, including those for the trip to Austin. After meeting Olivia, I had hours of free time. I was driving away from my house for the last time, so I checked into a hotel near the Philadelphia airport, placing the majority of my stuff in a storage unit until I could find somewhere to stay. I spoke with Barbara a couple times on the phone. She had gone to a friend's house since her father was sending angry messages on her phone. I changed my trip to Austin for the day and left on Monday morning. Kelly had called my phone multiple times from different numbers. Now there were emotional rants about how I could do this to her, how I damaged her career, and so on. Apparently the original uproar drew a lot of attention. Then someone posted a very accurate narrative on their blog, referring to Barbara and I as players. My statement about Kelly banging Paul was also publicized, as was the fact that they were together in Pittsburgh over the weekend. This created quite a commotion in county political circles and at the courthouse for the remainder of the week. I avoided most of the news from Philadelphia. It wasn't until Friday that I got an email informing me what was going on in Doylestown. Surprisingly, it came from Margaret, a senior manager at the DA's office. The old attorney apologized for everything that had happened. She knew Paul was meeting 2 people outside the office, but she had no idea Kelly was involved. She also appreciates that I retaliated by using the law against the attorney. According to Margaret, the fact that we could do box office was significant. On Monday morning, Paul was in the office, dealing with the fallout while denying any inappropriate behavior on his part. He tried to sell the scenario as being about my daughter rebelling under the influence of an unfaithful husband. Kelly received divorce papers on Tuesday based on adultery. Photos, DVDs, and a letter from me were included, prompting Kelly's horrified scream as she read my note. Margaret and 2 others rushed into the office. Kelly slumped on her chair from shock. Margaret observed the images strewn on the desk. My message informed Kelly that I was not having an affair, but I hoped she understood how I felt about her and jerk. I told her I couldn't marry someone I didn't trust, especially since I discovered she had cheated before. There wasn't much to do at the district attorney's office on Tuesday. Margaret was attending a meeting in Paul's office the next day when 4 men in suits strolled in unexpectedly. Paul was angry at them for disturbing an important meeting when one of the men informed him that he had been arrested. He was completely stunned when they arrested him and released him out of the office, she claimed. They walked him right through the courthouse's front door, allowing media who had been warned to enter. I owe Gary several beers for that one. Margaret ended the letter by apologizing for allowing them to behave in her office. She also begged me to let her know if I needed anything because I did not deserve this treatment. I'm sure part of her letter dealt with damage control, but mostly I believe Margaret was the moral and professional person I always imagined she was. My hopes for a peaceful divorce had been derailed by my own stupid, impetuous behavior with Olivia at that restaurant. Philadelphia news sites were eager to report Paul's arrest and charges. As I told Kelly, the narrative had all the elements of a summer romance. Sex, betrayal, retribution, and excessive angst. It was well received by news sources, and hungry 24-hour news services immediately grabbed it up. I evaded the worst of it because I was out of town and they couldn't find me because I had reserved a second hotel room 10 miles away from the one on my itinerary at work. I did check in there, however, and the reporters camped around it attempting to catch me. I noticed on television that they were camping out in front of my house. Kelly did not appear and they could only feel my family entering and exiting the house. Barbara had it the worst. As the daughter who turned in her own father, she still had to attend lessons and take exams. So for the first few days, the reporters had a rather simple time finding her. The school then kicked the media off campus for disturbing the students. It also helped that two ladies who had children with Paul had their own 15 minutes of fame after finishing the latest issue. Barbara snuck off campus and headed for the airport. The media was disappointed but not surprised when she did not attend the graduation ceremony. After a while, the story went to the secondary news category and remained there. It heated up as Paul's trial began, but he pleaded guilty to multiple offenses, earning him a 20-year guest appearance with the federal government. Fortunately, his guilty plea meant Barbara and I were not summoned to testify. Then it all vanished, taking Barbara, Kelly, and me with it. Surprisingly, despite all of the press, my divorce went very smoothly. Kelly signed the paperwork 4 days after getting them. I received a letter apologizing for what she had done to me and us. When she returned from Pittsburgh, she screamed angrily that she would never forgive me for cheating on her, only to discover that she was the only one who had cheated. She realized she'd been hypocritical. She accepted my offer of a 50-50th share and requested that I meet with her at a later date when things were less difficult so she could apologize in person. She finished by saying she will always love me and wishing me well. I later discovered from her mother that she had left her job and relocated to the Midwest to live with her aunt. Catching Paul transformed my career. Because I was hiding from the press, the FBI gave me full credit for examining Paul's records. I was considerably more thorough in Austin, where I discovered not only the embezzler they were looking for, but also a second one. They had no idea about at the time. My firm promoted me to lead the white-collar crime unit, and yeah, some prankster dubbed the team Hogan's Heroes. But the nicest thing was that they assigned me an assistant who was a fresh college graduate eager to obtain expertise in forensic accounting. I've never liked working late so much, and that bikini looked even better on the floor of my hotel room. Thank you for taking the time to hear today's tales. If you enjoyed the article, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a tale to share with me regarding your own or someone else's circumstance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.